The chapel in Chihuahua used to be holy. Now the crucifix bleeds and the bell tolls on its own. And if you step inside, you don't always step back out. If you're ready to uncover the truth behind what really happened in that cursed place, hit the subscribe button and comment the number 1 below to let me know you're listening. Because this isn't just a ghost story, it's a reckoning. It begins far from the chapel out in the chaparral, where the wind carries gun smoke and old blood. Cole Mercer rode alone, as he always had since the war. He didn't believe in saints or second chances, not anymore. But when he found her tied to a fence post, eyes defiant, lips chapped from heat, it didn't feel like chance. It felt like a warning. And instead of riding past, he stepped into a story soaked in secrets the dead never finished telling. The wind moved low like it was hiding something crawling across the northern Mexico chaparral, with a stink of old blood and burned wood. July heat pressed down hard enough to crack bone, and even the flies moved slow, as if wary of the land itself. Cole Mercer rode alone. Had been for years, since the war, since the screams, since Eli. His horse limped over dry earth that shifted like a thing unsettled. Cole didn't mind the silence. He wore it like a second skin. The job was simple: meet the rebels, trade intel for a piece of whatever they could steal from the French garrison at Chihuahua. Gold, maybe papers, maybe something heavier. But plans are funny things in places where the dead don't rest easy. It was almost sundown when he saw her. Just off the trail, bound to a scorched mesquite post like some offering to cruel gods, was a woman. Her habit was torn, red-stained in places no priest would speak of. Her wrists were raw. Her lips cracked. But when Cole rode up slow, one hand near the butt of his revolver, she didn't beg. She didn't scream. She looked right at him, eyes hollow but blazing. "You a nun?" he asked, voice more dust than sound. "I was," she said. "Name's Isadora Reyes." He dismounted without another word, cut the ropes with a Bowie knife that had tasted more sin than steel. She collapsed into the dirt like a puppet with strings sliced, but then she stood. Not thanks. Not tears. Just stood. "They said I talked too much," she said. About things the French didn't want heard. She didn't have to explain. The desert had its own laws, its own punishments. They walked for an hour, her barefoot, in blistered silence. He offered the horse once. She declined. Pride or fear, it made no difference out here. When they made camp near a dry arroyo, Cole skinned a rattlesnake and lit a fire from creosote wood. The smell rose like incense, but wrong. Bitter. Something sacred twisted. She poked at the flames with a stick. "Hard to believe snake can taste this good," she muttered. "You must be starving." "I've had worse," she said. The French served goat intestines once. Boiled. Cole chuckled low and dry. But as the firelight danced across her face, he saw at the bruises, the old blood, and something else. Something that hadn't broken yet, but had been tested. When she finally slept, she twitched like one hunted in dreams. Cole kept the fire going through the night, but the shadows moved wrong, longer than they should have. And once, just once, he thought he heard someone whisper in Latin from beyond the arroyo, though no one else was there. Not alive, anyway. Before we continue, if this story has pulled you in even just a little, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, give it a like, and comment the number 1, so I know you're still with me. Now let's keep going, because what happened next in the desert wasn't just survival. It was something darker. They didn't talk much that first day. Cole Mercer had seen silence before, battlefield silence, graveyard silence. But the one that clung to Isadora Reyes was different. It wasn't quiet. It was haunted. She walked behind him barefoot, trailing dust. Not because he told her to, but because she didn't want to walk beside anyone. Not anymore. Her eyes scanned the horizon like every bush might hold a bayonet. Her fingers hovered near her waist, reaching for a knife that wasn't there. Habit, maybe? Or memory? They made camp near the bones of a crumbled adobe house. The wind whistled through the broken stones like it remembered screams. Coyotes sang from the ridge, their cries too human, too long. Cole didn't like the way the stars looked that night, too many too close, like something was watching. Isadora whispered prayers in Spanish, fingers clutched around a wooden cross, so worn it looked more like a splinter of bone. Cole cleaned his revolver, slow, methodical. "You know how to shoot?" he asked, voice barely above the crackle of fire. She looked up. "No." "Well, you're gonna learn. Walk this land unarmed. You don't walk long." "I thought you weren't planning to keep me around," she said. "I'm not," he replied. "Just planning to get you to the war alive." "That's different." She didn't argue, but she didn't sleep either. The next morning, he handed her a small pistol. She held it like it might bite. "Trigger's stiff," he said. "Don't hesitate." She nodded. By the third night, they found an arroyo lined with twisted mesquite and a single dead mule, bloated eyes picked clean. Isadora said nothing, just stepped around it. Cole did too, but when he looked back, he could have sworn the mule had turned its head. He didn't say anything. That night, Isadora dreamed. Her body thrashed. She muttered in Latin again, not prayers this time, but something older, something colder. Cole woke to find her kneeling by the fire, eyes wide, pupils dilated. "I saw him," she whispered. "The boy, the one they whipped in the chapel. He had no face." Cole didn't ask how she knew his name. Didn't ask how she knew the boy had hung himself in the bell tower years ago. He just stoked the fire higher. Next day, she shot a rattler clean through the eye. Didn't flinch. Cole nodded. "You're learning." "I had a good teacher," she said. But her voice was distant, like it came from somewhere else. They kept walking. Miles of cactus and sun and bones, but something followed. The wind stopped whistling, birds stopped flying, and behind them, just beyond the edge of vision, footprints formed in the dust. No one made them. No one walked there. But they were there all the same. Cole didn't turn around. Neither did she. Some silences you don't break. You just walk faster. Still listening. If you're feeling the weight of this story, hit like and make sure you're subscribed. And if you haven't yet, drop a 1 in the comments so I know you're riding with us. Because what they're about to plan might just wake the dead. They reached the outskirts of Chihuahua under a blood-red sky. The kind that made farmers mutter and old women cross themselves. A rusted bell swung in the wind, though no breeze moved. Cole didn't like it. Neither did the horse. They camped inside the shell of an abandoned cantina. The adobe walls still stood barely, but the roof sagged like it was tired of holding secrets. Rain tapped above, soft and cold. Thunder rolled somewhere distant, too slow to feel natural. Cole spread a crude map over the table, drawn on the back of an old Union requisition slip. Isadora leaned over her breath, short fingers tracing the outlines of a place she once called sacred. "They moved the munitions here," she said, pointing to a spot beside the altar. "Crates of it, powder, ammo, even relics. They turned the chapel into a vault." Cole didn't answer at first. He was staring at the corner of the page, not the map. Something else. A smear. A symbol drawn in blood that hadn't been there when he unfolded it. "Did you do this?" he asked. She shook her head. No, neither of them touched it. Outside, a dog barked once and then whimpered like it had been kicked by something colder than man. Cole refocused. "You sure they still drink early on the 14th? "Every year," she whispered. "It's tradition." even the captain. By noon, they're half blind. That's not tradition, he said. That's the devil making room. She looked at the chapel drawn on the map and swallowed. I was baptized there. I remember the lilies, the light through the stained glass. I used to think I'd die in that place. You won't, he said. You can't promise that. Then I'll die first. Neither one of them said anything for a long time. The lantern flickered, casting twisted shadows along the walls. One of them didn't move when the light did. When Isadora finally lay down to rest, Cole stayed awake. He heard whispers that night carried low through the rain. Not wind, not storm. Whispered names. His, hers, Eli's. At sunrise, they entered the city separately. Cole dressed as a rancher with forged papers. Isadora in the servant's garb of the convent she once lived in the same halls, now patrolled by drunk soldiers, who used to ask her to conjugate verbs and serve goat stew. She slipped through the side door of the chapel, and she stopped. The altar was still there, but desecrated, scorched. The statue of Christ had no eyes, just holes black and seeping. The floor smelled of rot, and under it she could almost hear the whisper of chains dragging. She found the lantern, struck the torch. Smoke curled upward, a silent scream into the sky. Cole saw it, and then he lit hell on fire. If you've made it this far, you're not just curious, you're part of this now. So make sure you're subscribed, drop a 1 in the comments, and give the video a like if your heart's still steady. Because when the first charge goes off, there's no turning back. The smoke rose like a serpent, slow, black, sacred. Cole saw it curl into the air above the chapel's tower, twisting once, twice, then catching flame. That was the signal. He moved through the courtyard with dynamite slung low like a priest bearing a cursed relic. The French soldiers, drunk and slow, shouted too late. One stumbled with a bottle. Another never even raised his rifle. The first blast ripped the West Depot open like a rib cage. Fire poured through the stone, and a howl went up not from men, but something deeper, something under the floor. Inside the chapel, Isadora stood beside the old altar torch in hand. She didn't pray, not anymore. Her eyes stared straight ahead as the crucifix above her began to bleed thick black oil that dripped without end. No one else saw it, only her. She stepped out into the chaos. Bullets screamed, men cried, but she walked like she'd seen worse in the dark behind her eyes. Cole made it to the treasury vault door, half hanging on twisted hinges. Gold, silver, French ledgers. He didn't touch any of it, just planted the final charge and lit the fuse. He turned to run, but then the shadows moved. Not the soldiers, not the flame. Something else was in the corridor. He felt it before he saw it. Cold. Like graveyard marble. It whispered his name in a voice that sounded like Eli's, but wrong, stretched echoing like it came from beneath the ground. Cole, you left me. He fired blindly into the smoke. The bullets hit nothing. Then a shot rang out real this time and tore into his side. He staggered, blood rushing hot down his hip, barely able to breathe. As the second blast detonated behind him, the chapel shook, stone groaning like it remembered every sin ever confessed there. Isadora ran through the fire. She found him near the courtyard, well clutching his side face white with blood. You said you'd die first, she spat, pressing cloth to the wound. I didn't say I'd let you go, he whispered. Lips cracked. The sky rained coins. Gold screamed through the air, some still glowing from heat. Flames licked the old bell tower, and still the bell tolled once, twice, though the rope had burned away. Then came the silence, the kind that sucks all air from the world. A group of rebels emerged from the smoke bandanas, pulled up rifles at the ready. One froze. You're Sister Reyes, She didn't look away from Cole. I was. You saved us, he said. No, she whispered. He did. Cole coughed, grinned through blood. Might be the first thing I ever did right. But as they fled into the hills, carrying only what they could hold, the chapel behind them didn't burn clean. The fire hissed like it was being swallowed, and in the smoke, someone swore they saw shadows dancing behind the flames, faces not quite human. Take a breath, because what comes after the fire is what really matters. If this story's moved you even a little, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment one below so I know you're still riding with us. Now let's see what survived the ashes and what never left. They didn't speak much after the fire. The garrison was ash. The gold was gone. The vault caved in on itself like a grave. And yet, something still clung to them. Something that didn't burn. Cole bled for 3 days. Fever took him hard. He muttered names that weren't hers, some real, some old, some not his at all. Isadora dragged him up through mule paths and canyons where the French never rode, always looking behind her. Not for men, but for something she couldn't name. The kind of thing that moves without sound and leaves no prints, just cold air and the weight of being watched. They found shelter in a collapsed mission house walls, crumbling roof torn open to the stars. The place had once held hymns. Now it held silence so deep, it hummed. The wind didn't blow there. Even the coyotes stayed away. At night, Isadora sat by the fire grinding cactus pulp for salve. She watched the shadows. They didn't move with the flames. Once she heard bells in the distance. Faint, distant, but steady, the kind that toll for the dead. Cole woke screaming on the 4th night. Eli, I didn't see you. She caught his hand, held it until he came back from wherever the fire had taken him. You were dreaming, she said gently. Not a dream, he whispered. It was him. Still bleeding, still waiting. By the 7th night, the fever broke. He sat up, ate, drank. But something was gone from his voice, like the war had taken its last piece of him. They crossed into Arizona under new names. Bought a 1-room shack near a river where the earth was soft enough to bury things you didn't want the past to find. Isadora wore plain clothes. No habit, no cross. But every Sunday she walked barefoot to the river and whispered in Spanish to the water. Not prayers, not quite. Something older, something she never translated for Cole, and he never asked. The porch creaked under their feet. The sun rose slower there. Life moved like smoke, curling, lingering, then vanishing. They healed, sort of. Her nightmares became fewer. His pain flared only in the cold. But they both flinched when thunder rolled. One evening, years later, a rider came through town with a bounty notice. Yellowed, frayed, faint letters spelling Isadora Reyes, traitor to the French crown. The sheriff laughed, crumpled it. Ain't no one by that name here, he said. Lady lives by the river, plants herbs, brings soup to dying men. But that night, Isadora stood by the river longer than usual. She didn't speak, just listened. When she came back inside, Cole asked her, You all right? She nodded slowly. They're not done looking. Let 'em come, he said. But deep in the wind, beneath the crickets and the river's hush, a bell tolled once more, and neither of them slept that night. In a land scorched by war, betrayal, and silence, Cole and Isadora chose something radical: mercy. Their story is not about glory or vengeance. It's about 2 broken souls who refused to let the past define them. They carried scars, but instead of passing on pain, they built something tender in a world that had forgotten tenderness. They remind us that redemption doesn't always come in grand battles or loud declarations. Sometimes it looks like staying, healing, holding someone's hand through the night. And in that quiet courage we hear a deeper truth, the kind Christ spoke of. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. Even in the dust and fire of the Wild West, love can rise. Forgiveness can take root, and from ruins something sacred can still grow. Wherever you are, remember this. You are never too lost to be found. If this story left a mark on you, don't stop here. Click on the next video to ride deeper into the frontier where more untold stories wait in the dust. Because out here, every scar has a story, and some of them are just getting started.